We have 30 sessions and 3 keynotes, and each of the sessions has close to 3 people in them. Some have 2.5 people. So do the math. We have about 90 papers. Very exciting for us at Notre Dame. We haven't done this in the architecture school before, and we're just thrilled at the response and all of you being here, participating, speaking, moderating, and we're honored to have you. So for this next keynote, we have the pleasure to have one of my colleagues, Richard Economakis from the School of Architect, introduce our next speaker. Thank you.
Mr. Wyatt will be speaking on the instrumentality of architectural models in the design process. Mr. Wyatt joined Robert A.M. Stern Architects in 1983 and became a partner just 6 years later. He leads one of the firm's 8 design studios and spearheading its focus on buildings for academic institutions. He's co-author of the upcoming Designs for Learning College and University Buildings by Robert A.M. Stern Architects, which is scheduled for release later this year. The stylistic diversity of Mr. Wyatt's work illustrates his belief that contemporary architectural expression should enhance the existing context, both physical and cultural, and communicate his clients' institutional missions as well as satisfying their programmatic requirements. This approach has enabled him to successfully add buildings to historic campuses alongside historic edifices by architects such as McKim, Mead & White and H.H. Richardson and Walter Gropius and Marcel Breuer. Please join me in welcoming Graham Wyatt.
When Duncan first contacted me about today's session, he was pretty clear what his intentions were, but I warned him that I've never been one to follow the teacher's instructions. So I'm afraid I've gone today to something which is really my own personal obsession and central to my own practice, and Richard has spoken about this a moment ago, which is the use of architectural models, physical models, as design tools. And so I'm eager to discuss that with you today. There are different uses to models. These days, models tend to be used primarily by architects as shameless tools of promotion and sales. Nothing sells an architect's design to a client quite like an excessive model. And Oscar Wilde said, "Nothing succeeds like excess," and in this case, I would paraphrase that something like, the more excessive the model, the more successful the model. In this example, a detailed, illuminated, shameless model was central to the selling of the New York City World Trade Center site redevelopment, even though the actual buildings as they were built bear only general resemblance to what was shown in the model. And Philip Johnson would not have been shown, I think, on the cover of Time magazine holding a sketch of the 1984 AT&T building. A model somehow made his polemic of the moment much more physical and compelling than that. And those who just attended Janet Park's presentation will know that sketching and drawing wasn't really Johnson's strength in any case. This is really, those are recent examples that I show you. The use of architectural models as shameless tools of self-promotion predates our own era. Here is this wooden model, which I love, by Filippo Basile for his 1897 Teatro Massimo in Palermo. It's a theatrical production in its own right. It measures more than 8 feet by 5 feet. It's made of wood, and it consists of 4 hinged sections mounted on wheels that allow it to unfold dramatically, unveiling the building's interiors. Beyond that initial role, though, of models as sales tools, models have had historically a second really important function, and that is as a three-dimensional document of architectural precedent. The model room in Sir John Soane's home and office at Lincoln's Inn Fields, and I hope that many of you have now had a chance to visit that now that it's been reopened. It contains many models of this type, the architectural precedent type, actually as many as it does models of Soane's own buildings. Many of these models are imported from France and from Italy, and they show the signs of the frequent use that demonstrates or records their uses as sources of inspiration for buildings that Soane built and designed. In 1834, 3 years before his death, Soane transformed what had been the bedroom for his wife Eliza, seen here, that had been preserved since her death in 1815, into his model room. And the room featured this show-stopping, custom-designed central stand that displayed some, but not all, of Soane's 121 architectural models, and one of the largest collections of its kind. And chief among these are some really impressive models. There's a giant cork model of the ruins of Pompeii. There are 20 beautiful plaster models by the French modelist François Fouquet. Soane's model of the Temple of Neptune at Paestum, which you see here, was rendered in cork with terracotta capitals, and this was acquired by Soane in 1826. And interesting, I love this one because the model shows the temple in its ruined state as it was found then, including and documenting fallen stones around the plinth of the temple. Soane supplemented his library of models with architectural and sculpted fragments, both originals and plaster casts, and that collection eventually dominated his house, and these two figured centrally in Soane's work. At Notre Dame, you understand the importance of a cast room and know of its precedent at the Écoles des Beaux-Arts in Paris, and I encourage you now to supplement that collection with models of full buildings, as Soane did, and as the Yale School of Architecture does. If Soane's obsession with architectural models was ever in question, Joseph Gandy's famous painting famous among architects, of 1818 confirms the important place that they held in Soane's work and life. Gandy's painting illustrates over 100 Soane buildings. Also largely lost in today's world of digital documentation is a third important historical use of models, and that is their use as construction documents. This model of Thomas Jefferson's 1785 design for the Virginia State Capitol in Richmond was created not to sell the design to the client, that had already taken place, but to communicate it to a contractor. Jefferson gets credit for citing the Capitol and for basic decisions about the design, but he entrusted the preparation of the final drawings to Charles-Louis Clerisot, a celebrated French draftsman. It was Clerisot who persuaded Jefferson to reshape the proposed Capitol's exterior to largely conform with the design of the Maison Carrée in Nîmes. Intending to leave no doubt about the exterior design of this proposed temple of American democracy, Jefferson adopted the costly European practice of commissioning a scale model of the proposed building, and at Clerisot's suggestion, he turned to the eminent model maker, French model maker, Jean-Pierre Fouquet, who happened to be the son of the Fouquet who had prepared Soane's model. Many models. The plaster model of the Capitol arrived in Richmond late in 1786 with drawings of the design prepared by Clerisot and his team. It was later repainted white but the model was originally rendered in the intended buff color with inscribed faux joints. Every time the Capitol was repainted, so too Fouquet's plaster model was repainted. So embedded in the model then, this is really marvelous, you can see this on display at the Capitol, embedded in the model is the entire history of the colors of the Capitol, including kind of lugubrious Victorian colors, as later revealed through Model Conservation Project, which was undertaken in 1994. Also a reproduction of the model, which illustrates how much the detail of the original had been lost over time due to hard use and repeated repainting. So the 1990s reproduction is on your right, and the original Fouquet model is on the left. In his letter to James Buchanan and William Hay in January of 1786, Jefferson justified the additional expense of the model by proclaiming it absolutely necessary for the guide of workmen not very expert in their art. Not a lot of confidence in the Richmond craftsman. Another and decidedly different use of an architectural model as a construction document took place in connection with the 1959 American National Exposition in Moscow. A 180-foot-long framework for the U.S. exhibit was designed by George Nelson and Richard Barringer and was called the Jungle Gym. The Jungle Gym and the exhibit that it contained were intended to showcase, quote, the fruits of American labors for the public audience, a Russian public audience, at the height of the Cold War. The Jungle Gym model was completely independent from the glass pavilion building, which you saw in the last slide, that enclosed it. The Jungle Gym's design needed to facilitate easy construction, as it was going to be built entirely by Soviet contractors, and with limited resources and working on a very tight schedule. Also, a certain degree of flexibility was required, as the exact content of the exhibition weren't known until very late during the construction process. And here you see George Nelson and Richard Barringer and many members of their team at work designing the Jungle Gym and its network of exhibits in their studios in the United States. The 10-foot model, which once disassembled, was shipped to Moscow and was used as the principal construction document for the Soviet laborers who built the Jungle Gym on site. There were drawings, but there are a series of fabulous photographs. Here, intent worker with screwdriver in hand looking at the model. The completed Jungle Gym, as seen here, is arguably a full-scale model built on site. The design created an overwhelming atmosphere that enveloped visitors with a maze of displays in all directions. The fourth use of architectural models, and the real focus of this presentation, is the use of models as design tools. During this symposium, you will hear much about the importance of hand drawing, and while hand drawing remains essential, in my opinion, as an evocative and gestural method of both expressing and developing design ideas, it is not a substitute for modeling. In our office, new employees receive model-making instruction, some of them here from Notre Dame, and the office maintains a 7-person professional model shop, and above all, models play a central role in our design process. So let's visit our office for a moment in New York and see design models at work through the lens of 2 case studies. First, our 2 new residential colleges at Yale University. A little bit of background. For those of you who are not familiar with the Yale campus, it seems appropriate to set the stage, highlighting the unique way that Yale was built and the particular Yale institution known as the residential college. And I'll do this before I show you how models were essential to our design of the 2 new colleges. Each undergraduate at Yale is a member of one of 12 colleges. Each college houses a closely knit social group of between 200 350 and 400 students who were supported by dining hall and libraries, lounges, recreational amenities, a resident head of college. It's not just a residence hall, it's a major academic and social undertaking. Each Yale College surrounds courtyards and quadrangles with entrances to the students' residences off those courtyards. And Yale's skyline is punctuated by towers. The use of the entryway system off of courtyards eliminates corridors and allows the residential portions of the colleges to remain extremely slender, really domestic in their scale, typically less than 35 feet from outside wall to outside wall. The colleges share a largely consistent architectural rhythm, scale, ratio of glazing to solid wall, and even though 3 of the colleges are Georgian in style, Gothic is the dominant architectural language and the essential DNA of Yale. 6 colleges are Gothic. 1 is an artful combination of Gothic and Georgian, and the most recent 2 are Eero Saarinen's modernist interpretation of Yale Gothic. In short, the residential colleges is a specific building type, loosely fashioned on the colleges of Oxford and Cambridge, but with its own unique Yale-ness. So as we started work designing the 2 new colleges, now named Pauli Murray College and Benjamin Franklin College, we looked at relevant precedents from Oxford and Cambridge and a few American institutions, but above all, we looked at the work of James Gamble Rogers, the architect of Yale colleges, 8 of them, in fact, and the prime mover of the collegiate Gothic tradition at Yale. The design of each Rogers College is grounded in tradition but wholly inventive, and Rogers' convincing invention created a campus beloved by students and alumni, and for us, an important source of precedent if we were to design new colleges that would be instantly recognizable as members of an existing family. The new college's location did not make this family resemblance natural. The existing 12 colleges, which you see here in gold, are closely packed near the historic core of the Yale campus, while the 2 new colleges are located to the north of the historic Grove Street Cemetery in an area that had been seen as remote, is still seen as remote by undergraduates. Simultaneous with our own programmatic analysis of the existing colleges, we built scale models of each, both to understand Rogers' careful, considered massing strategies and as complements and components of a working model representing the central portion of the Yale campus. We also spent much time understanding the scale of existing spaces at Yale in comparison to our site through comparative analysis using drawings, you see one here, transparent overlays, you'll see that in a moment, and above all, models. For example, since a pedestrian public passageway between the colleges was required by the city of New Haven, we assessed the scale of similar passages around campus, and we assembled prototype colleges, which you see here, not actual designs, but straw men, by cobbling together, collaging elements, in this case courtyards, from the 12 existing colleges. And here we're really showing our sources. You can see where they come from. This strategy allowed us to understand the carrying capacity and the scale of the site and the possibility for including multiple courtyards in keeping with the existing colleges. Design for us is pragmatic, and it often begins, almost always begins, with quick study models in modeling clay. We use this technique in combination with drawings and computer modeling based on our experience that these 3 techniques used in combination are far more effective than any single one of them used on its own. So a few words about clay or plasticine for those of you who are literalists. Modeling clay is available in various consistencies and colors, and like the selection of an appropriate pencil, the choice of the correct clay is important to its effective use as a design tool. Some are softer, some are harder,
our favorite, my own personal favorite, is number 2, Roma Plastina. So I'm sorry to turn this into a vocational course, but if you're going to do it at Notre Dame, there it is. The selection's been made. Clay is a practical and forgivingly imprecise design tool. It's, in my mind, the 4B pencil, which is my favorite pencil, of model making. It can be quickly reshaped, sculpted, and reoriented during a design meeting. Far more than drawings, it results in actively social design sessions during which many participants express their opinions, and options can be developed and assessed quickly, and the process is documented with photographs and with videos. Yet, Clay's imprecise malleability is actually deceptive. Once you've chosen a suitable scale for your design model and estimated the appropriate average floor-to-floor height, an appropriate amount of clay can be determined by weight or volume. Here's the scale in our office. Use too much, and you've exceeded your program. Use too little and you haven't met your program. It's as simple as that. And if you have a fixed budget, you know how much you are over or under budget by. And by the way, that's not the number from Yale. That's a different project. Our early clay design models are often studied through the use of transparent overlays. Remember, I mentioned that a moment ago. These allow us to understand the scale, in this case, scale comparisons with existing residential college courtyards. So you see the hands, 3 different sets of hands there as we overlay a transparency comparing a proposed courtyard with a precedent courtyard. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the free-flowing design discussion that occurs around a clay model, in my opinion, is really far superior to what can ever happen around a set of drawings. For the Yale Residential Colleges project, models of individual buildings were built into a single large campus model that taught us a great deal about the organization and scale of the entire Yale campus and about Rogers' planning devices, and allowed for quick analysis of axial and visual connections. You see a couple of those here within the shifted New Haven street grid. Here, studying that same topic, the visual axis of York Street on the other side of the cemetery is represented by a taut string used to determine the appropriate location of Murray College's tallest tower. So this is a simple and powerful design tool. Yale charged us with the design of new colleges that were consistent in their architectural expression with the existing colleges, but there was an open question as to whether the colleges should follow Yale's Gothic or Yale's Georgian precedents. Both languages are spoken at Yale and both enrich the story and the history of the place. So we went through a cost analysis and we determined that actually both were achievable. That's a separate lecture than this one. We selected Gothic largely because it was the dominant style and because of the nearby Gothic buildings on Science Hill. As the clay models were developed, our team pinned on first scaled elevations of other Gothic colleges and later scaled sketches of our own elevations. Again, a simple, fast, intuitive tool. Given the complex geometry of the new residential college site, the Gothic language proved to be particularly forgiving, with much of the relaxed, idiosyncratic composition expressed in the elevations deriving directly from the program and planning. At each scale of design, we looked back at our chosen precedents, comparing these to our own evolving design and applying these to our models. And here you see, love this photograph, a sort of Potemkin village of other residential colleges, all drawn to scale on hand for rapid comparison. Although many imagine Yale as a predominantly stone campus, in fact, stone and brick are mixed liberally, with brick representing a substantial material component, especially in the vicinity of our site. And we studied the application and the distribution of these two materials around the Yale campus carefully, perhaps even obsessively, and applied the lessons that we learned to our own designs as they developed. Only once we were finished with these studies and with many rounds of those clay design models that you saw, did a representational model of the schematic design finally emerge with elevations printed directly from our Revit model. Moving into the design development phase required study at a larger scale and a higher resolution of detail, and our models also grew in size and scale. Here you see in one of our war rooms the quarter-inch scale design development model, almost 20 feet long, that was in front of the 16th scale schematic design model that you saw a moment ago. As we moved through the design development phase, this model kept a team of up to 40 people working together effectively. The continuously evolving model facilitated design decisions and was a valuable tool allowing us to study a vast array of design development issues while keeping our clients informed about changes in the design that were difficult to communicate by other means. Members of our team were assigned to a courtyard or a subset of buildings within the overall composition and were charged not only with design responsibilities but also with model making responsibilities within that zone. Each of the new colleges, several towers, were considered carefully in relationship to the scale and character of other important contributors to the Yale skyline. The Murray College Tower, at approximately 192 feet tall, will be roughly the same height as Rogers Hall of Graduate Studies, which you see here immediately to its left. And it will be slightly shorter than Harkness Tower at Branford College, which is the symbol of Yale as much as any building is. These comparisons were made using drawings, as you just saw, but more tellingly with models, endless models. And note that the variety of models here, some are clay, some are foam core, some with drafted elevations, others with sketched elevations. Many of these are at the scale of the design development model and at certain times were actually inserted into the model. If anything proves the power and effectiveness of this physical model, it's a comparison available to us today, photographed as the building which develops on site is photographed and is compared with the model from 2007. Each of the college's many courtyards was designed as an outdoor room, studied and experienced in 3 dimensions. Elevations and sections and perspectives were useful tools, but only large models were up to the task of allowing designers to experience these spaces before they were built. Caught in the act. How do these buildings' many elements relate to each other and work together to create a sequence of spaces? These are the very issues that physical design models allowed us to address. In addition to being practical and efficient in our selection of design tools, we are not Luddites. At every step during the design process that I've just illustrated, our physical models proceeded in parallel with virtual models, first in SketchUp, and then in Revit and Digital Project. At one point, Autodesk, who worked with us closely, told us that our Revit model, and here you see only the Murray College portion of it, was the largest in the world. We're not sure it's a distinction that still holds, or that we were even that proud of it at the time. The Revit model was exceptionally useful as we managed information about elements such as doors and windows. Here you see a virtual tool that we developed to make sure that fire doors in the dormitory areas were properly located. These types of visualizations are indispensable to our team and our contractor, and they're part of the design process, but this is not conceptual design. This is a powerful and useful parallel tool to the ones that I just showed you. Some components were too complex for Revit modeling, so we also used Digital Project, a parametric modeling software from Gary Technologies, and we applied this software to the complex geometries of archways and bay windows, for example. This software allowed us to study and document Gothic profiles that had been developed first in hand drawings and next in physical models. We used these models to generate both the detailed construction documents required and also to supplement these drawings with three-dimensional visualizations assisting contractors and fabricators. We also used the software for the tower, for example, both to develop details and to represent a prefabrication and construction sequencing strategy for this complex design component. Prefabricated panels for the tower were shipped to the site from a fabrication plant in Quebec using brick that was fabricated in Pennsylvania and including limestone from Indiana, which was hand-carved in Ontario. Over 400 pieces of carved stone and cast stone ornament were distributed throughout the colleges. Each of these pieces was drawn by hand. Most of them were modeled in plasticine. You see that here on your left-hand side. And all of them were documented in our Revit model. Now, I don't want to leave you with the impression that we only modeled in clay and foam core or by using computers. Before construction started in the college, we also modeled using actual building materials at full scale. I hope this model could be used as an entry to our construction trailer, but somehow I wasn't able to pull that off. But it still exists on a lot 3 blocks away from the colleges. We studied all the primary exterior materials and details, corner conditions, bays, buttresses, and so forth. But I must remind you that although this looks like a building, like the building itself, it is in fact a design model. It's built full scale using actual materials as a tool to facilitate our design process. And eventually, of course, we modeled the entire project at full scale on the site. The second, much quicker case study that I want to share with you today is a very recent project in our office, an addition to the McCann Athletic Center at Marist College, located in the Hudson River north of Poughkeepsie. The building's program includes a gymnasium and fitness center and other programmatic complements to an existing athletic building. Like Pauli Murray and Ben Franklin colleges at Yale, models figured importantly in the design of this project, which is still in the schematic design phase, so this is sort of ripped off the drawing board, so to speak. The photograph you see here is of a couple of our earlier buildings at Marist College. As I did at Yale, it seems appropriate to set the stage a little bit, highlighting the evolution of Marist College's campus character and some of the architectural influences originating in the greater Hudson Valley before showing you how models have been important to the design of this addition. The character of the campus is defined by its origins as a Hudson River estate, and the remaining historic buildings from that estate period have rustic stone walls and this distinctive red brick window trim and surrounds. Here you see recent projects on the Marist campus by our office, including on the lower left, the Hancock Center for Mathematics and Computer Science, a number of new entrance gateways into the campus, a student center, a music building, all of which build upon the historic character of the place. This is Marist College today, highlighting recent and current projects by our office, and here at the bottom of the screen is the McCann Center, in addition, located on the northern side of an existing building. Again, we used clay study models to study a variety of massing strategies rapidly. What you see here is the product of a couple of hours of teamwork. We studied the new addition in the context of the site and the existing box-like gymnasium. And as at Yale, we eventually moved to larger models and different materials, but at each step of these models are tools of design intended to develop and facilitate creative design thinking, not as presentation tools for our clients. So now let's go back to our office for a moment and join the project team at work.
Well, the use of models is really very much akin to sketching in 3 dimensions. And it is particularly helpful when you are dealing with an addition to existing buildings.
I don't think this clay model is
I
actually.
think this is farther out there, and this is not nearly as long.
So it's really helpful to us to have everyone on the team instantly judge what they like. And it's
Is the updated entry,
Yeah.
but the one on the left is updated everything else. So I may try to bring that into this.
and you'll make that last cut, and there's a nice proportion, and then all of a sudden everyone in the team says, hey, this is pretty nice, gets the results pretty fast.
Well, I do wonder if whatever this system is, doesn't. Do you think that this thing could be shorter?
It's a way of collaborating on the design. It's not in your head, it's out there. And there's something really good often about just getting out of 3 dimensions and going to elevations.
Retail. I think that's nice.
And tuck this back, that's the cafe.
It causes you to think about proportion in a different way.
Classrooms there. The senior, okay.
Yeah, right now it's at 9.
The beauty of models is they're just another tool.
See, I like this. I like the little opening that sneaks up there.
Yeah. Maybe it should be the other way around. We really do want that.
Trying to work out the massing of this fashion and arts building. Looking not only at the massing, but now looking at what the elevations look like. It's really useful to see them more than one face at once.
So you want me to replace them?
So marking that up and raising the windows and seeing what that building might look like with some future remaking of one half of the existing building, and get a sense of how it changes actually the feeling of the proportion of the volume.
I'll make a bigger entry piece.
The rendering is what the client will use to tell what the building is going to be about. And models, you just see it more instantly. And it's an interesting thing for the designer to look back at the evolution of a project.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
This is going to hit right about here.
Yeah.
So, back to Notre Dame, fellow architects, teachers, scholars, students, roll up your sleeves and reach in. The buildings and landscapes that we design are physical, they're 3-dimensional, and I hope I've made a compelling case today for why the design tools that we use should be also. Thank you very much.